What is going on, garden fans? Welcome back to the Permaculture Homestead. I want to start today's episode by giving a big thanks to Cliff over at the Urban Prepper channel. Now, I'm going to leave a link to his channel down in the description. Please go check it out. I had the opportunity yesterday to be a part of one of his gardening roundtables, where a lot of gardeners and other preparedness-minded people got together and just had a nice little roundtable discussion. So I'm going to leave a link to his channel and that interview down in the description. Please go check it out, go subscribe to him, and please go subscribe to all the other people that were on that panel. Really good preparedness-minded people, really good gardeners were out there, and I got to be a part of that. So, in today's episode, I'm going to do a quick walk around the food forest. I'm going to highlight and identify a couple things. I know I've gained a lot of subscribers here over the past month, and permaculture, companion planting, forest gardening is a new topic for maybe most of you. So I'm going to try to touch on some of those things and show you some real-world examples here on my home site. Now, I want to be very clear. I live on 2,000 square feet. We do provide a lot of food and fruit for ourselves here, but we do not provide 100% of our food supply. We do have chickens, we do raise rabbits. If I were to do that a little bit more, we could probably supply a lot more meat for ourselves. However, where we're at right now is this garden of mine is more of a demonstration garden. I use it to bring people over, show them what's possible, and hopefully implement some of the things that I'm doing here on their property for them. I've already started that. If you've been here a while, you know I work at the project site, Locklayer's Farm, where we've implemented a lot of the techniques that I use here out there. So come on back. We're going to use this as a welcome to the food forest kind of video. If you're not already, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and do slap like for me. That really helps us out. Come on back. Enjoy the journey. Welcome back to the Food Forest Garden fans. As I said in the intro, I live on 2,000 square feet in Zone 8, South Carolina, in the suburbs. And this is a demonstration permaculture garden that I use for clients, people who are interested in growing like this on their property. Now, I know at first glance this place might look very wild and unkept. That is part of the design. It's done that way to help disguise my food, not just from pests and predators, but from also humans. Most people wouldn't come back here and expect that everything growing is edible, but everything growing back here is either edible, medicinal, or a companion plant for something else. Starting back here on my Zone 1 garden, I call it, is Zone 1 because it's right by the back patio. It's close to me. I'm able to come out here and maintain it all. We grow polyculture, meaning lots of plants put together in one. So things like mint, clover. We have chamomile coming up. We have lamb's quarters, which we do eat. It's a spinach substitute. There's catnip, carrots. Of course, kale and collards are growing everywhere. And poppies are coming up, along with raspberries. And here's a wild one, wild lettuce, that I do eat. I add this to salad. So in this small area, a few square feet by a few square feet, we have flowers, we have medicinal herbs, we have edible things, all edible, and we even have weeds that are edible. So I work with the weeds. I don't try to weed everything. I'm very selective about what weeds grow in my garden, but I do let weeds grow, especially if they're edible. They're generally a lot more hardy and a lot easier to grow and need a lot less maintenance than regular vegetables. Now I got regular vegetables growing out here too, as you can see. Things like squash, we got zucchini, we have basil coming in right now. Loofah. Here's some garden sage. More chamomile. Watermelon coming in. Okay, here's some more kale and collards mixed in with some more of this lamb's quarters that we forage off of. So here again, weeds. We're growing weeds, and we eat the weeds, but we're also having cultivated annuals that we do enjoy. So lots of kale, lots of collards, lots of basil, lots of zucchini, more basil, and here's some more watermelon coming up and coming in. So we do have cultivated varieties of foods out here. They're grown somewhat square foot gardening style. I mean, I do respect spacing for most of these vegetables. However, there's some cases where I don't respect spacing and I put plants right on top of each other because they can function that way. They do fine growing on top of each other. So a lot of our annual vegetables are coming in, and the way that I kind of plant these things together is about the same way that I plant in all the perennials. So now all the trees and shrubs and everything else growing back here are grown just about the same way. They're stacked together, it's very dense, and it's very diverse. So here's a raspberry patch. Once again, right by the back door, it makes harvesting easy, and it's companion planted with a lot of other different things. This flower is a rose campion. Really just brings in pollinators. It's not a medicinal or anything. Lots of mint growing with this. And then more of these wild lettuces growing around. Here again, I eat all of the wild weeds. Weeds are not a bad thing. You just got to know your weeds. As we start stepping away from the back patio and getting out into the thick of the food forest, let me step back here and give you an idea of what's growing on. It gets very thick and it gets very dense. And the diversity, once again, is very huge. So starting from the right side of the screen here, a giant elderberry hedge growing up, starting to flower right now. That hedge at this time of year is providing some shade to the back of our house and a nice little windbreak for all the trees that are living amongst this forest. Okay, the next layer down, we have this tree hedge. The hedge starts with a pawpaw tree right here. And then we got a peach tree. And then if you look down the line here, we got more trees. And about every 6 feet apart, we got a different tree. So here's a fig tree growing right next to the peach. And as I continue to walk down, we have a mulberry tree right here. As we continue to look down, we have a bay tree and then an elaeagnus. And underneath all these trees are its own food structure. We have all these companion plants growing under the trees. So blackberries are growing up right now. We have more elaeagnus. These are goumyberry, nitrogen-fixing shrubs. As I continue to walk under and look under the canopy, we have lots of herbs growing and vegetables growing. So here are some volunteers. This is volunteer zucchini, volunteer squash, and then we have a nice little patch of carrots growing in the wake of our rabbit tractoring system. So vegetables grow as ground covers, and they grow amongst the tree species in here, the perennials. So here again, this idea of mixing, of companion planting, of polyculturing, putting lots of things together in one small area. Here is another patch of pawpaws that are doing amazingly. This is the first year I've actually had pawpaw fruit show up on this tree, and they're getting large. They're gonna be very big. I know that pawpaw fruit is very big. It's very interesting to see them. The fruit are kind of shielded in this pawpaw patch, and I've even got pawpaw runners starting to come out. Now these runners are going to be my money-making operation. I'm going to be pulling those runners up in the fall and selling them. This is how my garden is going to provide for me, not just food, but also money, because, I mean, hey, you want to make money from your permaculture homestead, don't you? I'm going to keep walking around here, kind of give you another demonstration, a visual representation of how densely we pack. So this is a peach tree, and not 3 or 4 feet away from that is that giant pawpaw patch. Amongst all that, we have elaeagnus growing. This is goumyberry, and this is a nitrogen fixing shrub. Okay, I'm using this as a chop and drop plant. This plant is providing nitrogen to the soil. It also happens to give me an edible yield. Here you see more of the weeds I'm letting grow. This is goldenrod. I have no problem with goldenrod growing in my food forest. It's a great ground cover. It's a great fall forage for bees. And if you look even closer, you're going to start to see the wild blackberries and cultivated blackberries, thornless blackberries, growing together. And believe me, these blackberries have no problem growing in the shade or in the canopy of these trees. Here's another blackberry. Blackberries are understory plants. They're not prime species like a tree. They don't fight for the sun, much like these trees do. So we have pawpaws, we have peaches, we have more pawpaws, and we have some tea, some Camilla sinensis. I potted on some tea plants here. This is going to be a new one. I'm leaving them in these pots until they show me that they're ready to come out of it. Here again, diversity, planting very different things. Still talking about companion planting and planting densely. This right here is sumac. This is a wild edible. Okay, winged sumac to be specific. You can see the wings in between the leaf pairs. I coppice all these sumac down, and they are a windbreak. They're planted around a jujube, a centralized jujube tree. So the main crop is the jujube. This is where I get most of a lot of fruit from this tree. The plants around it also produce, but they're also there as companions. They're helping break up the soil. They're providing nitrogen in the form of Elaeagnus right here. And I do get a food source off of these sumac. So I have sumac, I have jujube, and I have Elaeagnus. All edible plants, all planted very close to each other, and all working with each other to benefit the whole of the guild here. And this is the idea of companion planting, of guild building, of just stacking plants on top of each other that are going to work together and be good together. Here is a mulberry. Okay, big black mulberry. I bought it here, and I'm kind of starting to play with the mulberry here. I'm starting to bend it over and trellis it around the food forest, and this year I'm really playing with the food forest. I'm kind of turning it into art. Now, here again, amongst all the perennials, I'm growing vegetables. So we've got potatoes in buckets, and I grow these potatoes in buckets consecutively. I will start a pair of buckets, and then a couple weeks later I'll start another pair of buckets, and that is going to ensure that we have a continual harvest, a perpetual harvest of potatoes as we go throughout the year. Now I want to touch on like 2 more polycultures here, garden fans. I don't want this to be forever. I've got a giant hugel mound here, and what used to be here were 3 garden boxes that I broke down and started growing into. Okay, we've got things like thornless blackberries, which are starting to come on. We have herbs here, the medicinal herbs, things like apple mint, but we also have lemon balm growing amongst this. Here's more Elaeagnus and pomegranate. So here's a pomegranate starting to flower, coming into flower. This should produce for us. Not 2 feet away from it is an Elaeagnus, a nitrogen fixing berry, edible berry, gummy berry. And you can see that this gummy berry is loaded with berries. So I've stacked plants here on top of each other. We have a nitrogen fixer to provide food for the pomegranate. And then underneath it all, we have herbs growing. Once again, things like mint and lemon balm and rosemary, all the Mediterranean herbs, because I live in a Mediterranean environment. Stacking plants on top of each other. It looks very wild, but this is what nature does. Nature is wild, and I want to emulate that wildness here in my own food forest. I'm not afraid of the weeds. I will work with them. Beautyberry. This is beautyberry, Mexican beautyberry. This is a little bit different than Americana color carpus, which does put on a berry just like Mexican beautyberry, but however the Mexican version of it is actually tastes a little bit more edible. It's a little bit more palatable. That's the best way to put it. There's elderberry growing here. And plums. I mean, we have plums galore this year. Lots of plums. I have 2 plum trees back here, a Santa Rosa and a Methley plum, and they are producing heavily this year. And once again, this is the idea of stacking. I'm stacking plants on top of each other and right near each other. There is a muscadine grape growing down a fenceway here. The grape never intrudes on the trees at this point in the game, and they are also productive. So here you can see our muscadines coming in and coming on this year. I'm doing everything I can to utilize all the space given to me. I'm using vertical growing space. I'm growing in buckets to get my root crops out. And I'm planting very densely. Here are those 2 plum trees I'm talking about living in the chicken coop. The chickens do a great job of breaking pest cycles back here. They help me compost, and they provide for me a lot of eggs. This garden, fans, is just a quick walkabout the food forest. There is a lot growing on back here. I know I've just scratched the surface. The amount of food that we get out of here has been increasing every year as trees mature, as they get bigger, as the soil gets a little more biodiverse, and as I continue to wood chip mulch everything back here, things start looking a lot better from year to year. And this is going to be our most abundant year yet in terms of food and fruit production. I know it looks wild. I know that this is not very palatable to most people who like to grow in row and column style, but this is the future of farming as far as I'm concerned. And if more of us could do this, we could all be a little more self-sufficient in the suburbs. I appreciate y'all coming back here and checking out my little food forest today. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. That is what really helps us out and helps us continue to grow. If you got any questions, please just ask. I'll do the best I can to answer everyone. God bless.